Hey everybody, this is West Virginia Overtime, and we are on episode 4 of Paranormal Review. Tonight we are going to be talking about Destination Fear. We're going to start with the first season, the first episode, and it was shown on October 25th of 2019, and its title is Brushy Mountain State Penitentiary. When I first heard that Dakota was leaving Ghost Adventures, um, I had mixed feelings. I know that let me give you some history on Dakota. Dakota grew up in a haunted house in Minnesota. Um, Over the years, he kind of taught himself how to make films. He was always playing around with like the camera and the camcorder. He had a YouTube channel. He kind of became famous on it, doing different parodies, doing different setups with his friends there that he grew up in Minnesota. You can still see them on YouTube. There was a contest probably about 8 years ago on Ghost Adventures, and he actually won the contest, and him and his dad got to go. I believe it was to the old Charleston jail in Charleston, South Carolina. I'll have to look that up because I'm not 100% on that. He went there. He got to see the setup, the production. He got to hear how they actually put together an episode and edited it and everything. And that just reinforced to him what his dream was. And he has really been into TV, into movies ever since. And so he got invited, I guess it's been 3 seasons now, by Zach Bagans to come and work for Ghost Adventures. And he was going to be a cameraman, kind of learn the ropes, learn how to actually do some things. What they found out is Dakota is very smart. He is very curious, and he puts together things fairly quickly in very simple ways. And I don't mean that as an insult. I don't want anyone to take that as an insult. It is that he sees things happening in a scene or in whatever filming is going on, or even before it's filming, and he can see how different things can interact and maybe the location that you should film from in order to get the scene view that you want. It's almost like his mind almost breaks it down. And if you go on YouTube and you kind of see, as it steps up, you can see how he films and how it gets better and better, but how his editing and his production level gets better and better. So from learning from Ghost Adventures over the last couple seasons, he has really progressed. In the off season, he pitched several different shows and different scripts to different networks. Travel Channel obviously did not want to let him get away because he is so young and he is so talented. But he kind of thought up this idea of a psychological experiment about fear and how it affects the mind and how much fear can a person take or stand before they break. and I think that's the words he actually uses in the opening, is how much does it take before you actually break? In the beginning, he says that, joining him in this big experiment, because that's kind of what this show is a big experiment about fear, the levels of fear, what causes fear, and what can cause you to break, is his sister Chelsea. And then their best friend, Tanner. And they agree to go on this gigantic 10 place, 10 location road trip with him, not knowing where they're going and not knowing any of the history of the places, not being able to look it up or anything like that until they're actually ready to arrive. And Dakota feels like in order to learn about the paranormal, then you have to overcome your fear. Because in order to stand back and look at something objectively, you can't have your mind afraid and racing and doing all the stuff that it does when you're afraid, because you're not being objective about what you're seeing and what you're experiencing. So, I don't know this for sure, but I can see this experiment playing out a season or two, maybe 3, and then it evolving because they get to the point where they've somewhat overcome their fear, and then they can explore and learn about the paranormal. I think that's, kind of the likely progression of this show. And I think that is so smart and intelligent to start with that basic fear level and then see how far you can push yourself, but also see if you can learn to stand certain amounts of it and objectively look at things. Now, in episode 2, we talked about Ghost Nation. Now, if you haven't listened to episode 2 about Ghost Nation, in that very start, within, 7 minutes of that episode, a person asks a question of the Ghost Nation crew, which is Jason, Steve, and Tango, and says, are you in this to debunk, or are you in this to prove that it's haunted? Jason's answer was neither. It is to help. And in that episode, I thought, you know what? I need to take a step back, ask that very question after watching these episodes, and see what are they in this for. Well, after seeing this episode, and we're going to talk about it, I can say that Dakota is in this for neither. This show is not your normal paranormal show. So if you're going into it as they're going to investigate, that's not what they're doing. And they clearly, I thought, explained that. And so it's really weird for me. We have a Facebook group. It is Nick Groff, Portals to Hell, Viddy, and Ghost Adventures is the name of it. Feel free to join it. But in that group, I've seen several people say, I don't like it because they don't do this to investigate. I don't like it because they don't do that to investigate. Well, they're not pretending to be paranormal investigators. I think, a matter of fact, at one point, Chelsea says, I don't know anything about this stuff. So they're not in it to make a decision on, is this haunted? They're also not really into it to debunk it. They're into it to experience fear. Now, whether that's because the location they're going to is haunted and that's what creates the fear, or it is maybe the suggestion that the place may be haunted that creates the fear. That's what the experiment is about. That's what these episodes are about. Is it doesn't matter whether it is paranormal such as ghosts or creepers or whatever creating the fear, or whether it is your mind creating the fear. You hear them use psychosomatic in this several times in this particular episode. So they are very aware that they may be in a hallway, in a room, outside, wherever, and become afraid or scared, experience fear. And they realize that. They realize that their mind may be creating it. The experiment is not to determine whether or not it is their mind creating it or if it is actually something paranormal. The experiment itself is to allow yourself to experience that fear, what happens to you, how it can affect your mind, how it changes how you look at things, and how much fear can a person stand, and what will it take to break you. And I just find this fascinating. I watched approximately 5 minutes of this, listened to them talk, and was just like, I love this. I had kind of already made up my mind. I really enjoy this thought, this experiment, what they're trying to do, and I want to go on this adventure with them. So you have to be aware that that's within like 5 to 10 minutes, I was on board. So look at it, and when you hear me talk about it, understand that I was already on board. They didn't have to convince me to get on board. As I've said in the past, if you haven't listened to any of the previous episodes, I am fairly a skeptic. I was raised in the church. I have never experienced the paranormal. I have went on different cities, ghost tours, and visited ghost touristy places, but I have never been to any of the big paranormal sites. The Stanley Hotel, or Rolling Hills or Waverly Hills, or anything like that. I've never been to any of those. So I have never really experienced those. I also do not go to haunted houses. I do not watch scary movies or horror movies. So please understand that that's where I am coming from when I'm talking about these shows and what's going on. Dakota sits down, introduces the RV. They already know that they're going on a road trip. They know that they're going to be traveling to 10 different locations and they're going to be filming. They've already agreed and they know that they're going to be sleeping alone at certain locations and that the locations may not be the best accommodations. So, what that, when he was explaining it, kind of reminded me of course, is Paranormal Lockdown with Nick Groff and Katrina Wyman. And so, it was almost like he was taking their concept of living in a place, but Nick's concept was in Paranormal Lockdown was to see if investigating longer and running experiments for a period of time would allow you to prove whether the paranormal existed or not. So Dakota's theory on this is a little more simplistic and not as high level as that. It is based on fear. So he pulls out a pocket, and I absolutely loved the whole pocket thing. And, introduces that they are going to Brushy Mountain State Penitentiary and that it's over 100 years old. And he tells them that, it's full of decay. And I started really enjoying them. It reminded me of Ghost Adventures when I first started watching it and watching the interactions and the relationships. And you can see that it is so cool. You have a brother-sister with Dakota and Chelsea and how they interact, and then how they interact with their best friend and how he has different relationships with both of them, how they joke, the funniness of it. I love the diary style cameras where they take the cameras and they go off alone and film themselves talking, and they're just kind of getting their thoughts free flowing, which is what you're kind of getting from me. And I just loved that. I loved when someone said, "Oh, gee, one RV with one bathroom," and I just thought, "Oh, I really want to like these people. They are people that I want to hang with. They have really cool personalities. You see how funny and cool, calm, laid back Dakota is. And as the episode progresses, you see the concern that he has because he truly cares about his sister and his best friend. And that shows. And so I really want to like these people. I really think I'm going to enjoy this season. The end showed what to look for in the season, and we'll talk about that at the end. But at this point in the show, I was like, oh, I think I'm really going to enjoy this. He starts talking to him about Brushy Mountain and how 10,000 people have died there. I loved the pocket idea. I loved that they were not going to actually interview people, that the pocket had information and they were going to read it to each other, that it contained pictures. I liked how the production style that Dakota chose as far as showing interviews, but it wasn't them asking questions or trying to interview people, because that sometimes becomes boring and they don't connect and it's awkward. And this wasn't like that. This was them, kind of reading about it and talking about how the fourth wall is the cliff. And I really enjoyed The cinematography. I enjoyed the shots that Dakota chose. Whoever is his cameraman, whether it's Alex or it's other people, or it's him or Tanner or whoever, the shots that they got of the prison, or excuse me, the penitentiary, were outstanding. I thought the cliff was wonderful. The drone shots showing that it's an inverted cross, and the area of it, how desolate it is, but yet how huge it is. I just found the camera work in this. You can tell that Dakota truly wants to be a filmmaker, and that he thought this through, and that he shot different locations with different shots to actually draw you into this place they're going. And so I truly enjoyed that. I liked the interviews with the general manager and the guards, and them talking about the problems in the auditorium and having a creeper, and how the general manager doesn't like going, to death row, the D block, and how the solitary confinement, that they hung them by their thumbs, and that some people, where they were in the dark for such a long time, lost their sight. And it's almost like, when you hear it from someone and they're actually talking about it, it's almost like they're telling you a story. And your mind can wander, and it can kind of convince itself, well, they're making up a story, or they're trying to scare me, or something like that. But when you are reading it off of a page, I think it's different. And so to see Chelsea and Tanner and Dakota reading it and thinking about it, and kind of, you could see the three of them were kind of discussing it and bringing up different issues. I think that starts creating, oh my gosh, this is real. And it starts building in your mind. And not that they were creating fear right then, but it was like they were laying the foundation. They were laying groundwork that the fear could build off of. And, then they came out with the James Earl Ray was held there. And talking about how he killed Martin Luther King Jr., and how, number 28 was his cell, and what happened, and just different things. And I watched how that affected them. And with them being so young, they learned that through history. They didn't live through that. I didn't live through that. And so I was a little surprised at the reaction to that, because I think I would not have had that reaction. He is a figure in history like Napoleon is. And I just don't know if that would create any kind of fear, because he shot him across the street. He wasn't up close and personal to Martin Luther King Jr. when he killed him. He wasn't stabbing him, looking him straight in the eyes with a cold stare or anything like that. So I was a little surprised with how they reacted to that. I didn't like that immediately, right after that, Dakota started bringing up demonic forces. Because I thought, dude, you've learned that from Zach. I think anybody that has followed Ghost Adventures has seen a big change in how Ghost Adventures has investigated the kinds of locations that they've investigated, especially since Nick Groff has left, and how much it has even further changed since Zach has opened the Haunted Museum. So, for no one to mention any demonic forces, none of the interviews said that. The pocket that they were reading did not say that. I personally have never heard of that with Brushy Mountain State Penitentiary. Zach, or excuse me, Nick Groff did one of his tour sites there. He had Elizabeth Saint and Jennifer and Lee Kirkland there, and they did not mention any demonic forces or anything like that when they showed the video of Brushy Mountain. So for Dakota to just kind of bring that up out of the blue, I was I was disappointed. I mean, I'm just going to go ahead and tell you that. I was a little disappointed in him in just mentioning that. Um, at this point, with the pocket, and then them seeing the penitentiary walking up, the drone shots, and how Chelsea talks. Right now, Chelsea's my favorite. Um, I like Dakota. I don't know Tanner. But Chelsea's my favorite. Chelsea feels like me. She is a scaredy cat, and I love that. And I love watching her go through this and experience this. And I want to see how she grows. I want to see, what she finds out from this. So I'm pretty excited about that. But they walk in, and I absolutely loved that they showed the birds. You usually don't get to see that. You hear paranormal um, investigators or lecturers or people on podcasts or stuff talk about birds being in locations. You hear them talk about animals being there and them having to chase them away, but it's rare that they show them. It's rare that they show themselves get that freaked out. I mean, Chelsea hit the ground. And I was thinking, if that happens in broad daylight in my front yard, I'm hitting the ground. Because I don't want a bird to hit me, and I'm scared of it. I don't know what it's going to do. It could claw my eyes all out, for all I know. So, I was excited that they showed that. Because that's a normal reaction. And I think that's what I really liked about this show is I love reality shows. I love when they show people kind of just acting normal, being themselves and truly opening themselves up to the experience. And I think that's what this first episode did. I liked that Dakota, as they were going through the different areas and everything, he brought up residual energy. Now, like I told you, I'm a little bit of a skeptic, but I can kind of buy the theory, looking through history, that there may be residual energy places. I have visited Gettysburg. I have walked those battlefields. And picturing and imagining, 1,000 soldiers or even 100 soldiers being in an area and being mowed down, you've got to think that somehow some kind of energy, particles, ions, atoms, whatever, had to be left behind. And so with them being in a penitentiary and Dakota bringing up residual energy, I kind of buy that. And I kind of buy the theory that natural substances such as rock or stone or wood can contain that. And residual energy is not intelligent. It is like bangs, or you see something and it basically happens about the same time every day. It's almost like a tape recorder that is just playing the same thing over and over. It's repeating itself because it only contains a certain amount of energy, and it only contains a certain type of energy. And so, from thinking about that and thinking that through, I can kind of understand that a little bit. I can think about that and maybe buy it. And so I was kind of excited that Dakota brought that up. He comes back to that a little later on. But, like I said, they're not into finding out whether something's intelligent or it's residual or anything like that. They bring little paranormal things up as they go, but they're not really into investigating. They're more into investigating themselves, what they feel and what kind of fear they actually do. Now, when they got to the hospital part, I really want to take some time and kind of think about that and talk about that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get a drink of water. I'm going to give you a break. I'm going to be right back. I want you guys to kind of hear a little bit about Anchor, which is what I'm using, and just kind of give me a break to get a drink. So I'll be right back. Hey everybody, I want to tell you about Anchor. It's what I'm using to make this podcast. I use it not only because it's free, but because it's easy. I can record and broadcast anything and everything right from my phone, or I can use a computer. It allows me to edit things, and it has everything I need just in one place. And not only that, you can make money from your podcasts. But what you have to do is you've got to go download the free Anchor app. Go to anchor.fm just to get started. And then send me a link. I want to hear your podcast. Hey, this is Sam with West Virginia Overtime, and we are discussing Destination Fear, episode 1 of season 1. And so we're just kind of discussing this first episode, Brushy Mountain State Penitentiary, and they're kind of doing a little bit of a walkthrough before they decide where they're going to sleep for the night, and kind of letting themselves experience things. They go around, and I can't help but think that either Alex, who is the cameraman, or Dakota has studied a map or has been in there before. Whether, it was the day before or whatever, because they do kind of know their way around a little bit. And that place is huge. So, it doesn't always surprise me that they're like, where are we? And then all of a sudden they see a sign that tells them where they are. And they pick up awful quick in semi-darkness and in darkness of how to get to each other and where they are and things. They're not getting lost or anything. So kind of makes me think that they either studied a map or they have a little bit of a clue of where things are located. So you see them go into the hospital. And the reason why I want to kind of break this down and talk about it is because I got a really weird feeling about it, and I kind of want to see if you guys did too. I have purposely stayed away from any group discussions about this show because I knew that I wanted to start with episode 1. So I didn't want to go and discuss it on our Facebook group. Now again, that Facebook group is Nick Groff, Portals to Hell, Viddy, and Ghost Adventures. You can find it and join our discussions, or you can talk to me on any of our social media platforms. We are WV Overtime on Instagram and Facebook. And on Twitter, if you want to tweet me, it is at OvertimeWV. Our email is wvovertime@gmail.com. So feel free to hit us up on anything with any questions, comments, problems, or protests that you guys may have. Because I'm going to bring up something that's probably a little controversial. I felt a little weird when they went into the hospital because I felt for the first time in the show like Dakota was acting. I felt like he changed, or he morphed into something he thought he should be. He started to have bad feelings in there and reactions and all of that. And it just made me wonder, because some of his mannerisms and some of the things he said to me mimicked Zach Bagans on Ghost Adventures, who he looks up to and, has kind of become a mentor to him. And so that shocked me. I always thought that Dakota was his own person, and I don't know if I was looking for that or whether it just hit me or anything. So I kind of want to know what you guys think, because I really felt like Dakota started acting there and was saying things that he thought he should say about that area. Now, Tanner's throat starts hurting. It appears that he's gotten dust in his throat. I think at one point Chelsea says, "Do you have your inhaler?" I tried to rewind that on my DVR and kind of listen to it closer, but she is not speaking up at that point because I think she's a little nervous about him. So I wonder if Tanner does have a little bit of asthma or some issues with dust or whatever. He wasn't making motions like someone was grabbing him, or that he was being choked. So I don't think that, there was some ghost in there choking him or anything. It appeared to be the area that they were in, having dust, him breathing it in, him maybe getting excited and taking too big of a breath, or something along those lines. I was a little concerned about him, but so was Dakota and Chelsea, and so they kind of removed him from that area fairly quickly, I thought. On some other paranormal shows that you watch, I think they would have made him stay in there and try to choke them to death. But they kind of got him out of there, and they went on over into the D block, which is the death row block. I was a little shocked, I think, to see that they whipped out the Ovilus. Through hearing some of the interviews and reading some articles about this and deciding whether or not I even wanted to bother with this show, I read that they did not use a lot of paranormal equipment because they weren't investigating. So for them, very first episode, to whip out an Ovilus, which to people who haven't seen this or don't really understand it or anything, I do like when people kind of describe it as a speak and spell for us older folk. It is something that energy can supposedly use to create words. And so they go to cell 28, which is where James Earl Ray stayed and lived. And so, you know, to, I think, amp it up and to create fear and see if they could see if there was anything there. You see Dakota taking Polaroid camera pictures, and you see them using the Ovilus, and of course they get entire, mommy, and kiss. Now, me being a skeptic, I didn't really feel like that those words meant anything. They have not mentioned that Chelsea is a mommy. I get the feeling that she's extremely young, so I don't know if she has kids or not. That would have been the perfect time for them to say, "Oh, you have kids," but they didn't. And they said, "Well, maybe he thinks you're a mommy." So again, I feel like they're jumping to conclusions, and I wish they wouldn't do that. Then it says kiss, and then they automatically jump to the conclusion that whoever is doing this energy wants to kiss her. Well, maybe not. Maybe it wants to kiss one of the guys. Or maybe it wants the three of them to kiss. I think they were jumping to all kinds of conclusions. In this show, I think that's fine. I really do. Because whatever conclusions your mind starts thinking, whatever stories your mind starts generating, I really feel that that's fine, because that can create fear, which is, again, remember what this show's about. Now, if you hear me do paranormal review about some other paranormal shows and they use an Ovilus and they start jumping to conclusions, well, the skeptic in me is going to go throw a fit, because they shouldn't be doing that unless they can back it up with some other kind of evidence. But in this show, I'm okay with it, because they are supposed to create fear, and the more fear that they can create, the more this experiment about how it affects their mind, will it break them, how much can they stand, it's going to work. So this was perfectly fine with me. I saw that it bothered Chelsea, and she kind of had my reaction to it. Like, they were saying, kiss, he wants you to kiss him. And she was like, yeah, not happening. No, no. And she just kind of shut that down. And I thought she was being really real, because I think that's how I would have acted. I think that's how most, girls are going to act. And so I thought, that's really cool. So they kind of meet up at main base with Alex, and that's where they decide what three places bother them the most, what three places do they not like the most, what three places are they afraid of the most. And it reminded me of Paranormal Lockdown, because they were going to sleep alone. Now, what Nick, again, comparing it to Paranormal Lockdown, to show you the differences. If you watched Paranormal Lockdown, Nick explained why they sleep alone. He wanted people to go to sleep. He wanted himself and Katrina to go to sleep, to be tired, and to be able to let energies, spirits, angels, demons, whatever was in that location to be able to communicate, to interact, or anything like that with them more easily, because their guard would be down where they were asleep, they were unaware, that it could possibly allow them to have dreams and things like that. This show is not about that. This show, they are sleeping alone in order to create fear. You are more afraid when you're alone. You don't have anybody really to talk to, although they did have the diary cams, which I loved. But they didn't have anybody to talk to. Therefore, their mind is running wild. Are they truly hearing noises, or is their mind hearing noises? What kind of stories are their minds generating? It's not about them relaxing to go to sleep and allow things to happen to them. It is about them being turned up way past 10, being turned up to 17 and amped up and energized and having these racing thoughts and your mind creating these different stories and experiencing that. And so it's a totally different show. So don't take and say, oh, they're sleeping alone, it's paranormal lockdown. No. It's not. It's a different show. So I liked how they went around, and each one of them, Dakota automatically says hospital, Tanner says the hole where he had problems breathing, and of course, Chelsea doesn't like James Earl Ray's cell area where she feels like he kind of tried to come on to her. So, I think it was fixed. I'm gonna admit it. They all got the place they didn't want to go. And for that to happen, the odds of that is pretty, it's not going to be a normal thing that happens. So if it happens every episode, I'm going to be calling that bogus. But for it to happen this one time, I was like, okay. Because that could have very easily, with the different shots that they showed and cutaways and stuff, been edited in for them to get the actual areas that they didn't want to go into. So, that could be just an editing trick that Dakota performed. That's not that big of a deal. So, Chelsea goes to James Earl Ray's cell, and Dakota's at the hospital, and then Tanner, ends up at the hole. So, of course, they automatically start with Chelsea. And like I said, she's already quickly become my favorite. She decides, for some unknown reason, to sleep with the Ovulus. And I don't question that. She can do whatever she wants. I get the feeling that she is a scaredy cat like me, so I would not be adding things to create fear. I can create enough fear in my head all by myself. I don't need any help. And I have a funny feeling that Chelsea can also. However, I think that she was thinking, oh, we had the Ovulus and it was messing around. It'll be great TV, and maybe I'll get to have a conversation and talk, because I get the feeling that she's social. And so she's like, I'm going to sleep with the Ovulus. Now, even Dakota says, are you sure? And of course, she's like, oh yeah, I'm fine. So immediately it says goodnight, it says paranormal, it says lay, it says squeeze, it says video, and then it says down. Now, even I, with those 6 words, am creating a story in my head. And so I can imagine that she is too. Now, there is some discussion on whether the obvious can be pre-programmed to say certain words or just for TV, or that someone can remotely control it for TV purposes. And maybe that happens. But again, this is not really a paranormal show. This is about fear. And so if there's someone in the nerve center or out in the RV or 10 feet away from her programming that, I don't really care. Those words were enough to frighten her, and you could see that. I really enjoyed Dakota. He almost didn't want to leave her. And you could see it on his face. He never said that, but you could see that the little brother was a little concerned. And she finally is like, "Get out. I know you don't want to go to the hospital, but go on." And so he does. And as he's leaving, he says, "I love you." And he says it really natural, like he says it all the time. And Chelsea's immediate response is, "Shut up." I love that part. I think it might be my favorite section of this whole episode, because it's a brother and sister thing, and it was so natural. And I know I keep coming back to that, but I think that's what I enjoy about this show, is it is so different from others in a good way, in a light-hearted way, in a way that is taking you down a path that these so-called paranormal shows don't. So then we see Tanner, in the hole. We see Dakota in the hospital. We see how Tanner has some experiences with noises. He believes that he sees someone down the hallway. He sees a shadow. He becomes really nervous, and you can see that it's almost like he is fighting not to leave. That he is really not sure of what he's wanting to do. And it's almost like you can see his brain thinking, well, if I leave during the first location, what is that going to say about me to these TV people? And how much worse is it going to get? Because everyone knows that they're starting out easy in this, first episode, this first location, and that Dakota's going to ramp it up. So I feel like he probably had the most real experience, and I'm also excited to see Tanner's growth. I think, and this is a prediction, I think throughout the season we're going to see that about Tanner. I think he is a jokester, but I also think that he is a thinker. And I think he is very aware of the cameras and how he is portrayed. And I think that we're going to see him get broken down probably the most. I know at the end of this episode, it seems like it's Chelsea, and that she screams a lot and is scared a lot. But I have a funny feeling that the person that is going to probably change the most, their thinking may change, their attitude about fear is going to change, is actually going to be Tanner. Because, like I said, he was so afraid sitting there by himself in the hole, yet he was very aware of the cameras and very aware that he did not want to run out of there. Dakota, he's been put in places by himself already in Ghost Adventures. I mean, he was put in the Haunted Museum to look and stare in the Bela Lugosi mirror last year as the Halloween special. So Dakota's kind of used to this kind of stuff. I really didn't feel like Dakota had a true experience or was truly afraid. I felt like he probably was more wondering what kind of reactions he was getting from Tanner and Chelsea. I'm sure with this being the first location, he was wondering how the filming was going and whether this show was going to be immediately jerked off the air. I would like to be able to interview Dakota and actually find out what he was thinking, but I just did not get the feeling that this location made Dakota nervous. I did not feel like the hospital, like I said, when he was there before during the walkthrough, I think he was acting. So I just don't feel at any time at this location that Dakota was nervous, was scared, was unsure of anything. Now I am hoping, again, this is a prediction for the rest of the season. I am hoping that he gets put in situations where he is nervous or afraid or he experiences fear. Either fear for himself, fear that his mind has created, or fear of what is going on with Chelsea and Tanner. I'm not going to differentiate what kind of fear. I just want him to really open up and feel something. As far as Chelsea, they didn't show her that much after Dakota left her. I almost have a funny feeling, and I would like to know this for sure. I wish they had an after show, or I could find an interview, or I could actually interview Chelsea, because I have a sneaking suspicion that they did not show her that much after Dakota left. Because I have a sneaking suspicion that Chelsea was somewhat tired and she went to sleep. And I have a sneaking suspicion she did not sleep well, and she probably woke up on and off. But I don't think that she had anything exciting happen to her, and I think she went to sleep because I felt like she was the most tired of the three and had the most fear and amped up adrenaline rush through the walkthrough and through what they had experienced. So I feel like she crashed. And I may be wrong, I don't know, but I just know that they didn't show anything. So obviously she didn't hear any big bangs or didn't see, a big monster. Sasquatch did not come down the hallway and grab her or anything. So I just get the feeling that she was pretty uneventful. I really enjoyed that they came out and they each went off and did a diary cam by themselves about what they experienced, what they felt, what they thought this was going to be like. And you see them getting into the RV to go to the next location. If you can't tell by this paranormal review, this first show really hooked me. Now, it may not have hooked you. I don't know. I really enjoyed it. It's a different type of show. I don't know that I would necessarily classify it as paranormal. I don't really know what I would classify it. I can see this show being on A&E or the Discovery Channel or Viceland, or something like that, and it just being a show about an experiment of fear, and not be pigeonholed into paranormal. I could almost see, they would have to change some things, but I could almost see this on, regular network TV, and it be billed as a reality show with some comedy and fear. A little bit like Fear Factor, a little bit like the old show Fear that was on MTV that started, I think, in the late 90s. So I could see this show on different things. So I'm enjoying this show. Um, I'm really kind of looking forward. They're getting into the RV, and their next location, I'm gonna go ahead and blow it, is Old South Pittsburgh Hospital. It's in Tennessee. It has been on several different paranormal shows, especially with the Tennessee Race Chasers. And with that hospital, there is just fear just because of dying. And is supposedly has different kinds of spirits in it. So I'm kind of looking forward to that. So the two things that I have seen, I've tried, like I said, to kind of stay away from reviews, stay away from discussions about this show, is one, uh, people are upset that they're not trying to debunk things. Well, they're not going to, because the show is not a paranormal investigation show. So if that is what you're wanting, this show is not for you. Um, do I think it may eventually become a paranormal investigating show? Yeah, I could see that. I could see right now they are brand new. They are newbies. They don't understand things. I don't know that they want to become paranormal investigators. Um, this is more, you have to look at it as an experiment show. That Dakota has this theory that he's trying to prove whether it's true or not. So they're not going to debunk. Um, because what is debunking going to prove? That you shouldn't be scared of it? Um, they don't want that. So if you hear a noise and it ends up being the heater at the location, well, who cares? It scared you. It doesn't matter. Um, so it's kind of like going into, a haunted house, and they're not going to attack you or touch you. They tell you that. So a lot of people don't get scared because in their head they debunk it. These people can't touch me. They're not going to kill me. Nothing's they can't do anything to me. So I'm just going to walk around. And every once in a while they jump because they're not prepared for someone to come at them. And then there's other people that go into haunted houses, know that they can't be touched, but they think of these things in their mind and create stories, and they experience fear. And so that's kind of what you're seeing. So like I said, I saw a lot of reviews saying, well, they don't debunk anything. They don't spend enough time investigating things. They don't spend enough time with different kinds of equipment. I wish they would have used thermals. I wish they would have used the SLS camera and blah, 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 blah. They would have set up REM pods, and guys, they may do that later on. I don't know. Maybe they go to more haunted places where they feel like those things will work and scare them. Or maybe they're going to introduce them slowly. I don't know. I don't know what the season holds. But it makes sense. They are not investigating the paranormal. They're not trying to prove whether the paranormal exists or not. That's not what this show is about. If you read any articles, any interviews, you saw any interviews, if you watched the first 5 to 10 minutes of this episode, it explain that to you. So please give this show a chance to grow, to develop, to see where it goes, where this experiment goes. Please give yourself a chance and don't consider it a paranormal show. If you like it, I encourage you to get other people to watch it. I think it's fascinating, but maybe that's just me. I like the people involved. I've already said I like their relationships and their interaction. I'm enjoying this. I enjoyed the first episode. So I am recommending this to you. I'm encouraging you to watch it. I think it's going to be an interesting adventure that we as fans can take with them and see how they grow and what they learn and what they experience. So I'm pretty excited for, the next episode. So I am going to get off here and leave you guys alone, and I will see you at the next paranormal review. I'm not sure what the subject's going to be. I can't really tell you. I don't know. But I will see you at the next paranormal review, and thank you for listening to this. Feel free to talk to me on any social media or to join our group. And one more time, it is Nick Groff, Portals to Hell, Viddy, and Ghost Adventures. And feel free to listen to the previous 3 episodes that were about Ghost Nation and Ghost Adventures Halloween special about the Conjuring House. And if you want to listen to any of the other shows that are on this podcast about Disney or wrestling or coaching or about West Virginia sports, feel free to do that too. But I look forward to hearing about this episode. So contact me, and I will talk to you guys soon.